I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet that the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Farah. I want to welcome everybody tonight to the Empty Chair Part 2, Living with the Chair. I want to welcome those who are with us tonight as webinars, and then also those of you who are with us by Facebook. Do want to ask all of those who are logged in on Facebook, if you would do us a favor, like and share, hit that share button so we can get this out and get others to come and be a part of the webinar. If you just take a moment and share the link, I would appreciate that so very much. Please share the link. Do want to again appreciate you for coming tonight for this discussion, which I feel is a very serious and needed discussion. When we left our first webinar, our first time sharing and talking about grief, we did talk about the need for knowing when to get help, what getting help looks like. And so we brought some panelists tonight that's going to talk to us about the need for getting help, how to get it, and also dealing with the pressures. And then we're going to have one panelist share their journey as they have dealt with grief themselves. I want to share my screen and walk through a review of what we went through last time, brings up the speed to getting ready for what we're going to deal with tonight. As we deal with grief has so many faces. It takes on a face. It could be a crashing wave. It could be a silent moment. It could be depression. It could be anger. So there is no right or wrong way to deal with grief. Grief for everyone is different, even though you may be in the same family and lost the same family member. Your grief is still going to be different. Grief cannot be shared. It must be faced by each individual. A lot of times we try to move at somebody else's pace, whether that's quickly or slowly. You have to move at your own pace. And definitely, as you go, you want to definitely develop a strong relationship with the Lord. Because when grief comes, our faith teaches us that God is in control of everything. So we have to wrestle with the why. Why did God allow it to happen? Why did God put us in this position? Why did he let our loved one leave us? But that same God that you are wrestling with, the why question, is going to be the God that's going to carry you through, who's going to lead you through this process of grieving. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep a close relationship with God. And these are the days when he will shepherd us. As David said, the Lord is my shepherd. These are the days that we walk closely with God. So you're going to need God. Be angry, but you're still going to need him. So you're going to have to turn to God to help you through this grief process. There's nothing heroic about grief. It's painful. It is work. It is a lingering process. It's day in, day out. It's a grind. And you have to be up for the challenge. One day you can be on top of the world and it seems like everything's going well, and tomorrow just one mention of something, a fragrance, a situation, a deja vu moment, and it takes you right back to square one. So it's a lot of work that has to be done, but it needs to be done, and it's doable. And so certainly you do want to make sure that you understand that you got to do the work. It's a multitude of emotions involved in grief. The grief process, emotions that seem out of control often appear in conflict with one another. With each loss comes bitterness, anger, emptiness, love, sadness, apathy, just all kinds of self-pity and helplessness, guilt, sadness. They rush upon us when we have to deal with the loss. Sometimes we think about, I had them sent that last text, if I'd answered that last call, if we had not ended with that last argument. These kind of things brings a multitude of emotions, and you got to understand that these emotions, they are real, and as long as you do what I say, call dealing with them in real time, making sure that you embrace the moment, understand that right now I am angry, right now I do feel bitter, right now I'm afraid, the anxiety, all these things rushes upon us. Time does not heal anything. It just teaches us how to live with the pain. For the rest of your life, you will remember this person, these persons, or the situation, the loss of the job, the divorce, because grief is not just death. Grief is a loss, the loss of a friendship, the loss of economic and financial standings. We have to deal with all these losses. Failing the test that caused you not to get the license to be qualified to get the job, it's a loss, and you got to deal with it. Time does not heal anything. It just teaches us how to live with the pain. And we always got to understand that grief is so disruptive. We said last time we were sharing that grief is so disrespectful. It shows up in our lives at what we consider to be the most inopportune times, and we have to deal with that and embrace it. Grieving is a disorderly process. There's no ABC, 1, 2, 3, step by step, do this and you'll graduate from this. It's a disorderly process. You won't control it. Tears will come at a time when you don't feel like you want to cry. Heart may be heavy at a time you're trying to be happy, and you can't schedule its expressions. You can't hide how you feel, because then you move into the state of denial. So we got to understand that grief is disruptive. You lose a loved one right at the zenith of planning. You're in the 9th month of pregnancy, and a family member dies that long to see the child. They never get to see the child. Grief is just so disrespectful. It comes when God allows it to come, disrespectful to what our schedule may be. So we have to understand that the nature of grief is kind of like a waterfall coming over, crashing into the water. It's just, it's a lot that we have to deal with that flood in on us all at one time. Grief is slow, and you need to be like, it need to be like that, even though you probably want to rush it along. It will take longer than you have patience for. Time seems to stand still, especially at night. Don't let others rush you through this process. They are not experts, and you'll discover others. You'll find sometimes people are uncomfortable with your grief. They'll be like, why are you crying? You need to get over it. You ought not be doing this, doing that. You got to do what it takes for you. Let your grief do its healing work at its own slow pace. You needed slowness. Grief cannot be fast tracked because you're setting yourself up for a great fall if you deal with the process like that. You gotta deal with it at the pace it comes at you. Why grief? It's been said, for those of us who understand, no explanation is needed. For those of us who do not, no description is possible. If you got to ask why grief, it's not going to be able to be explained to you. But I promise you, when you put those shoes on, that you're going to understand it. Grief is a journey, and the mileage is unknown. We don't know how long it's going to take us to get to that point where we can function like we need to, get things back together. But remember, grief is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't set your mileage gauge and say, I got to go 20 miles and I'm there. You get 20 miles and it's going to seem like you haven't made the first step. So the mileage for grief is unknown. Why grief? Do we have to go through this grief experience? Grief responses does basically three things. Disruptions, holes, confusion, the many faces of grief. Death is like of a loved one disrupt your entire schedule, and the ensuing grief doesn't just impact one part of you. It is something it's not something you select, like clothes on a rack or cover for a portion of your body. It comes from within and does not leave one particle of your life untouched. Going through grief, you express your feelings about loss. You got to talk about it. You can't keep it inside. You invite others to walk with you, but they can't walk for you. You got to understand that you can invite others to walk with you, but they do not walk for you. Secondly, through grief, you express your protest at the loss, as well as your desire to change what happened and to have it not be true. This is a normal response. First time the news reaches your ear, no, it is not true. Stop playing. Why are you playing with me? Don't play like that. So you get a chance to protest while you're grieving about the feelings that you're having, and wishing that when I wake up in the morning, it's going to be a bad joke or it's going to be a nightmare. And you wake up in the morning and the fact is still there, or the loss has occurred. Thirdly, through grief, you express the effects you have experienced from the devastating impact of the loss. Through the grief, you may experience God in a new way that would change your life. As Job said, my ears had heard of you before, but now my eyes have seen you. Job 42:5. I have heard of thee by the hearing of my ear, but now my eyes seeth thee. And so what we're looking to do is embrace God a little bit more closely, and trust him through this process. Grief leaves holes in our lives, and we have to deal with that. The question of grief: why are the holidays such a difficult time for people missing loved ones and grieving? We have such strong traditions, strong memories around the holidays that uses all our senses: the sense of taste, the smell of food, sound of music, prayers, touching and feeling, hugs, and love from people. Such visual and strong memories can trigger memories of our loved ones, and grief just comes. It just comes from that. So just the smell of potato pie can take you back to a moment of grieving, or just to hear a Christmas song, or somebody talk about decorating. All these things can be triggers to set us off, especially during this time. The expressions of tears: when words are most empty, tears are most apt, according to Max Lucado. The very time we can't express ourselves, we express ourselves through crying. Remember, you'll get through this. It won't be painless, won't be quick, but God will use this mess for good. And you got to trust God as you as you walk through this process, but you will get through it. Kubler-Ross grief cycle. The first thing we do when we're dealing with grief, according to Kubler-Ross, is that we move into a state of denial, avoidance, confusion, elation, shock, and fear. When we first hear the news, we deny it. Ain't no way that can be happening. Ain't no way that's going on. Y'all quit playing. You pick up the phone, you call the person, and it goes to voicemail. You keep calling, it goes to voicemail. You text, they don't respond to the text. You IM them, they don't respond to the IM. Then you get in your car, you got to go see, you got to go to the place you last saw them. All of these emotions flood in on us, and we are dealing with denial. Then we move into the step of anger, frustration, irritation, and anxiety. We're mad about it. Mad with God because God let it happen. Maybe mad with the situation, or mad with somebody that's done it. Could have been a wreck. We mad with the other driver. We're angry. And then we start bargaining, struggling to find meaning, reaching out to others, telling one story, bargaining with God. God, if you can just bring them back, this would change, that would change. Then we move into depression, being overwhelmed, helpless, hostility, and flight. We don't want to deal with it, even though we know it's true. And finally, we get to the point of accepting, exploring options, new plans in the place, and moving on. And so we want to think about this cycle that we can go through, and you're really not going to skip from denial to acceptance. You're gonna go through. Even if you do, you're gonna find yourself reverting back at some point, kind of catching up with these cycles as you go. And so that brings us now to tonight's session, when we want to spend some time talking about, okay, what does it look like? The chair is empty. We've come to that realization, it's empty. The loved one is gone. No matter what we do, is not going to bring them back. So how do we deal with that? And I get ready to bring Miss Zadie Rogers. Zadie comes to us tonight with some 30 plus years in social work and dealing with sharing counseling with persons who have in difficult situations. And Zadie gonna share some things with us about how we know when we need help, and it's all right to get help in those things. Won't y'all welcome Zadie Rogers as she comes.
Good evening. Thank you, Pastor Hawkins, for allowing me to be a part of this process this evening. I would like to just say that all of us have dealt with grief at some point in our lives. It's never easy. I think about myself. I have lost loved ones. Right now, I would say I'm going through some grief because it's been a year since I've seen my daughter, and I won't even get to see her for Christmas. So it's really been a difficult time, especially with the pandemic going on. A lot of us have not been able to see our loved ones. We've lost numerous loved ones over the course of the last year. And it's just been a hard thing for a lot of us. But I know that those of us who are Christians, a lot of times we feel like we can go to our pastor and he'll be able to help us through whatever we're going through with grief. And yes, he can, but sometimes you might need more than that. And if you are going through a situation where you've talked to the pastor and you're still feeling like the situation is not resolved, that you are still hurting, you're still going through, then perhaps you might need to see a different level or look at a different option as to getting help. And that is how the mental health profession comes in. We have trained counselors and therapists. We have psychologists and psychiatrists. Those people are trained to help deal with you if you have fallen into a depression. And the way that you know that you might be in that state of mind, or if you're, sinking into depression, one thing you might be feeling like life is not worth living after you've lost your loved one. that means you might be thinking, I might want to be with them. Well, of course, if you're at that state of mind, then you probably want to talk to someone. You might also wish that you had died with a loved one that you lost. So again, that is a clue or cue that you might need to seek some professional help. You may blame yourself for the loss of your loved one, which is another cue. You might be feeling numb or disconnected over a period of 2 weeks. If you're feeling like that, you're just really feeling down in the dumps. Maybe you're spending more time in the bed. You're not leaving the house. You're not doing any of the things that you once liked or enjoyed doing. And so that's another cue that you might need to seek professional help. Or if you're unable to resume life due to the pain or loss of the loved one. So those are just some of the cues that you can look at or to consider seeking professional help. Now, there are other things such as your physical health. If you're not eating, if you're not sleeping, those are also things that you might want to consider to seek some outside help.
Okay, Zadie, we as a people of color have a tendency not to want to participate in the counseling process. Would you kind of talk about the need for us to be willing to actually embrace that opportunity, because help is available through that realm of counseling?
Yes, I know it's kind of a stigma in the Black community, for sure, that we're supposed to be strong enough that we can handle our problems on our own, that we don't need anything, we don't need anyone but the Lord, and we can take it to the preacher and we can get those issues resolved. You have got to, if you're thinking about some of the things I've mentioned already, and you have not sought any help, then you've got to embrace the idea that there are people out there who are trained that can help you get through these difficult times. So no longer should we be thinking that, we can handle this all on our own, because most of the time you cannot. You're going to need some help. So it is nothing wrong with seeking professional help to help you get through some difficult times.
And definitely, I want to say to our audience that from a pastoral perspective, that I want to tell you that we do have limits. That's why God has saved counselors like Zadie and others, saved professionals who can deal with these situations. We are to be your spiritual leader, but we're not your total solution to your problems. God works things out for us, sometimes miraculously, but then he does it through others. And we've got to really be willing to embrace the things that Zadie described for you, 2 weeks to a month. Some of you are a year into it and still feeling the same way. That's a good time. Praying about it just ain't going to be enough. You really need to get with somebody and talk with them about what's going on. And so I really wanted to bring Zadie up to let her tell us that this is good for us. If you have questions for Zadie, you would put those in the chat and we'll forward those to her at the Q&A time. I want to thank Zadie again for coming, and she is available if you need help. If she can't help you, she know how to point you in the right direction. Farrah, go ahead, Zadie.
Pastor Hawkins, I did bring some resources that if people are interested in wanting to look into pursuing personal counseling with a therapist or a psychologist, we do have specific entities here in the community that you can contact about getting private counseling. We have our local mental health center, which is for those people here in Jackson County, it's listed over in Goshen, Mississippi. And then we also have Coastal Family Health, that is a service. And then we have our behavioral health clinic, which is a service through Singing River Hospital. So either one of those entities can provide private counseling if you so desire to go that route. But then there are also support groups, Pastor Hawkins, that people can tap into. We have the Hospice of Light, which provides a support group for grief counseling. We have St. Paul United Methodist Church. We also have First United Methodist Church. And I can get those numbers, and if people would like to tap into those resources, I can share that with you.
Okay, Zaid, if you would get that information, send it over to me, and I will send it out to all those who did sign up for the webinar via email.
Okay.
And they can have those resources available.
Okay.
All right. Amen. Thank you again for sharing and bringing those resources to the table. Farrah's getting ready to sing for us at the break, and then we'll get ready to go on with the webinar. Farrah, would you come?
There is a name I love to hear. I love to sing. It's worth. It sounds like music in my ear. The sweetest name on earth. It tells of one whose loving heart can feel my deepest woe, who in each sorrow bears a part that none can bear below. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me.
Amen. Certainly, we thank God for his love for us. Thank you, Farrah. At this time, I'm going to bring Brother Jackie Rogers. Jackie brings experience and knowledge as it relates to substance abuse. And we do know that some of us, when we deal with these problems, we think that maybe we can drink our way to deliverance or smoke our way to satisfaction. Holidays and grief brings a lot of pressure on us. And some of us choose to use external stimulants to help us get through the process. I'm going to ask Jackie if he would come and speak to how to deal with the pressures without seeking to abuse any kind of stimulants, whether they be drugs or alcohol or some other form of being an escapism for what we're actually dealing with. Y'all welcome Brother Jackie Rogers as he comes.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Pastor Hawkins. The information that I have here, I gathered some of it from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. They have some really good information, so if you want to look some of this up at your leisure, that would be a great place to go. First, we'll speak about the pressures to use drugs. Drug use is a dramatic issue that begins in different ways for different individuals. There are countless reasons why people begin to use drugs, whether they're illicit drugs or prescription drugs. The range of reasons why people take drugs is as broad as the type of people who use them. Contrary to popular belief, drug use doesn't solely fall under the category of mental illness, homelessness, or even poor family upbringing, like most of us may think. Educated individuals with high-paying jobs, family, and seemingly the perfect life that they're living can be vulnerable to drug abuse as well. In general, there are three primary causes of drug abuse. It could be emotional, physical, or psychological. And with grief, it's emotional. And if we carry that grief long enough, it can become physical. The National Institute gives 22 different reasons, but we won't go over all 22 of those. And we've all experienced some of this. End of relationship, environmental influences, just to relax, self-medication, financial stress, career pressures, school pressures, family demands, peer pressure, and social pressure. That's one of the main reasons right there, peer pressure and social pressure. Because most times, the abuse starts at a young age where we think we're just drinking and hanging out with the fellows or with the group and want to be involved and join in, and not knowing, as my mama used to say, if you hang out with dogs, you get fleas. And it may not affect you right then at that young age. I always say the devil is out here setting you up. And he sets you up well. You go along and party and have fun and enjoy yourself. You think you're enjoying yourself. And in the long run, you end up destroying your life. Now, as it relates to grieving, the death of a loved one, such as a close friend, a family member, or even a mentor who positively influenced a person, is emotionally devastating for people. Different people handle grief in different ways. Pastor Hawkins already went over some of that. Some people are able to seek counseling or work through grief on their own in healthy ways. Other people readily struggle with emotional or physical loss, so they use drugs as a way of coping with grief in the short term. However, the short-term mechanism may transition into a long-term dependence for some people. And we all know in our families, when somebody died, what happened? If it weren't for COVID, we all be gathered up. You have some under the tree, some in the house. We all know what's going on under the shade tree. Back in my family anyway. Okay, so the other things we can talk about, the pressures. Just think about it. I say it started out when you're young. Picture the time you in high school or college with a friend, convinced you were doing something that you were initially opposed to. Coming from a Christian family, raised up in the church and all this, blah, blah, blah. You were opposed to this drinking and partying and drug use. But perhaps someone asking you out or pulling a prank on another student. Let's now imagine it was more harmful or involved drinking underage when your parents were out of town or sampling an illicit substance. Pressure, peer pressure. And we even get peer pressure as we get older as an adult. On our jobs, different groups we may be a part of. You never get away from peer pressure. Imagine, and here's another example. Imagine you passed on an initial offer or even a second or third. How did that feel? Were you the odd person out? Some of us don't want to be the odd person out, so we'll join in on what's going on. Were you laughed at or made fun of by those friends who enjoyed the substance freely? Or maybe you were one of the many who, despite a desire not to engage, let your fear exclusion take over and override your sense of judgment. Sipping and puffing instead of passing. That peer pressure can be something else. Social pressures increase the likelihood of going against initial decisions, oftentimes with a dangerous result. So now that we talked about some of the pressures to use, we've all seen these commercials where they said, just say no. It's easy to say, but you have to really put it into practice. Now that I remember back, we talking about grieving. My father died 42 years ago. I was freshman in college. Here I am, freshman in college, getting ready for finals. I get a call, my father has passed. What am I to do? I'm around some of the wrong guys doing the wrong thing. And we drank vodka and took speed to take our finals. We passed, but that's what we did. Peer pressure. Even when you're confident in your decision not to use drugs, peer pressure, like your friends, family, and loved ones, can influence you to do things that you would normally do. You have to really be a strong person. A lot of times, a simply thank you may be enough, but sometimes it's not enough. You have to get real intense, especially if people who want you to join in on this bad idea feel judged. Here are a few tips. Offer to be the driver. Just say no. And if you're at a party and they pressure you to drink, get you a Sprite. Get you some cranberry juice in a glass. You don't have to drink. They don't know what you're drinking. That's just some ways not to drink. The main thing is, or use drugs. The main thing is to stick to your guns, stick what you believe in. I found that now that I've been clean for the last 20-something years, that you could drink till you fall out. It wouldn't bother me anymore. Because now in my mind, in my soul, God has saved me, enabled me to be strong enough to resist that pressure or temptation. So beware of the desires that impress your friends or override your fear of taking drugs. This could also apply to deciding whether or not to use drugs and alcohol. Your decision could save your life.
Hey, Jackie, if you would,
sort of way. And if not, any questions, I'll try to answer them. Or I can point you in the direction of somebody that can answer. Because I am not the expert. I'm just somebody that lived through it and know a little something about it and try to help somebody else make it through it. That's all. Thank you.
Jackie, if you would, just for a minute, elaborate on somebody who may be listening to us right now that's in the throes of substance abuse. What do you recommend that they do to turn it around, or what's the first step?
What happened?
If you can hear me, if somebody's on drugs now and listening to you right now, what would you recommend as a first step for them turning that around? Did you hear me?
What?
You lost your sound again. Okay, we'll come back and address that in the Q&A. Larry, if you would reach out to Jackie, see if you can help me with that. Get ready to bring to us Miss Pamela Dickey. Pamela is going to talk to us a minute about the fact that she suffered great loss because both of her parents have transitioned with Jesus. And she wanted to just take us on a journey of how she has gotten to the point to where she is now, living with the empty chair. Which y'all welcome Pamela Dickey as she comes now.
Good evening. Thank you, Pastor Hawkins, for allowing me to come and share tonight. When he first asked me about it, I was like, oh my goodness. But, you know, as Mr. Rogers said, once you've lived it, you're able to really, really talk about it. And so I'm just going to talk about what happened with me. Well, my father passed away in 2003. And, it was a difficult time because I was daddy's girl, but I had my mother. So I really didn't go through a journey of, grief, I guess, or whatever. I just, I missed him. There were times, I thought about him a lot, especially because we own a funeral home, and I missed, working alongside him in that way. But when the grief process and the journey began for me was in 2016 when my mother passed away. And initially I went through mild depression, anxiety, and after about a couple of months, I realized that I needed to do something different. And I'm just going to talk just a little bit about how I've managed on this journey. And it is a journey. After a couple of months, I realized I needed to talk to someone. And I was blessed because there was a friend and a mentor that I've had over 26 years. And I always will tell her, when I grow up, I want to be like you. And, we shared spiritually when I was getting my master's, things of that nature. But in 2016, she is a licensed professional therapist. So in 2016, our relationship went to another level because at that point, I needed her as a therapist. And I called her and I told her how I was feeling and what was going on with me since my mother died. And everything I told her, she said it was normal. And every time I felt a certain way and somebody told me something that I didn't want to hear, I remembered that was always in the back of my mind. What you're going through is normal. I had a lot of anxiety because the church that I attend, I've been a member since 1977. My parents were very active in the church and all of that. So that was a real issue for me as well. But I continued to go. I pressed my way. But she did recommend 3 books here, Pastor Hawkins, and I'm just going to share. And if somebody wants the information afterwards, I'll send it to you. But she recommended a devotional. And the title of it is Grief One Day at a Time. And it was 365 meditations to help you heal after loss. 2 other books, Healing After Loss, a daily meditation for working through grief. And the 3rd one is How to Go On Living When Someone You Love Dies. And then there's an organization called Grief Share. I signed up with them and I received an email every day for 1 year. And those things helped me as well. Personally, in a more personal way, after this, I started doing what I wanted to do. I had done probably what everybody else wanted me to do. But at this point, I began to take care of myself because I realized that self-care was the key. And I had a lot of friends that lost their mothers after I did in 2016. And I know it was God that put it in my heart to do. I started texting them every day. I would send them a text, good morning. I'd send them a GIF or something like that. And when I was doing that, not only was I encouraging them, I was encouraging myself. And one example I want to mention, I never met this lady before. She went on our funeral home website and she reached out to me to do a program for her mother. She lost her mother. And I did the program and never talked to her about anything, just about the program and everything. And she lives in Louisiana. And when I met her in Slidell to get the programs prior to her mother's service, I just started texting her. And it's been now a couple of years and we have just become like sisters. And, sometimes when I text, she's having a bad day, she's at work, but somebody did that for me. So it was just a blessing for me to be able to do that. Also, and Reverend Hawkins and Miss Rogers was talking about, you have to work through the grief and it's okay to feel whatever emotions you were feeling. And I was feeling like something that Miss Rogers said, I'm a Christian. I understand all of that. But, right now my mother is gone. And I just, I didn't want to hear anybody telling me, your mother's in heaven. She's with your daddy and all of that. I didn't want to hear that. I just knew that my mom was not here, So I went through that. I started doing things recreational. I have nieces and nephews. I started going to football games, things that people thought I would never go. When I would tell somebody I was going to a football game, they was like, what? All you ever done was church. But I started doing that. Award ceremonies, all of those things. But I think the most important thing for me was when my parents opened the funeral home in 1959. And when my dad died in 2003, it was a goal of mine to assist my mother to carry on the legacy. And then after the year before she passed the mantle on to me. And my journey through my own grief and the grief counseling and support that I received, it helps me in a real way to offer real condolences and sympathies to the families I serve. Because a lot of times we hear, they say, oh, I know how you feel. I know how you feel. No, you don't know how I feel if you have not sat in my seat. And so now when I tell people, you know, I'm praying for you, I'm offering, my sympathy and all of that, I really know what I'm saying. And I mean, it's heartfelt. And as Pastor Hawkins mentioned also, holidays are the toughest. But one thing my siblings and I have done, we have family traditions. It's coming up to Christmas. And one thing my mother did on Christmas, she made gumbo. I'm not a cook. So we all decided on every Christmas we were going to make this gumbo. So my brother, he comes over, he stays all day, and we all put our little inputs in. And I mean, it just becomes a joyful and a fun time for us. And everybody knows, they think they know what she did and all of that. But that's just one thing that we do. And all the times when we get together now, we cherish the memories, and like I say, owning a funeral home now, being an entrepreneur since 2012, right before my mother passed away, grief and losing a loved one now is a different feeling for me, because right now I really, really know. And so that's just kind of kept me going. I mean, I have my moments even now, but I'm much better now than I was in 2016.
Okay, Pamela, if you would go through again, taking control of your life, because you seem to have gotten to the point where you're living with the empty chairs. When did you decide, okay, I got to live for Pam? Well,
I think it was somewhat probably within the year after my mother died, because as I mentioned, I'm a person, I help everybody calls on me to do a lot of things. And I just made up my mind. I said, you know what? I'm going to do now what Pam wants me to do. I did what everybody at the church wanted me to do. I've been administrator there for 26 years. I did with my uncle, my former pastor, Reverend Dickey, my mom, my dad. And I just decided after my mom died within a year, I said, I don't have anybody to, look after or to tell me what to do, basically, if it's something I wanted to do. And it was about a year after that. And so now I enjoy life. I can't do anything now with the pandemic, but, like I say, football games. I mean, I went to a couple of NFL games, just living life. And I felt better after that. It was like something just lifted me, and it was helping me, to get through, what I was going through.
Yes, that's the point I wanted you to bring out, was that you felt better. When we deal with living with the empty chair or chairs, we have a tendency sometimes to feel guilty if we laugh or if we feel good or if things go well, like somehow we are disrespecting the love of our loved ones. And we got to know it's all right. That chair will never be filled in this life by that person again. And our loved ones would not want us stuck and not able. Your mom would want you to do exactly what you're doing now. I knew her well. She would want you not able to cope without her, because as parents, we try our level best to prepare our children to live without us. But yet our love and loyalty to our loved ones sometimes get us stuck, and we just feel guilty if we laugh or if we have a good time or if we feel all right. And I really appreciate you sharing with us your journey.
One thing, Reverend Hawkins, I want to say, when you said that about, and I guess another thing that helped me too, one thing that I did with both my parents, whatever, I could do, and even with the business and when they got sick, And that was not a thing that I had as far as a guilty conscience about something I didn't do, because I did my level best to do everything, you know, that they needed, and with our business and all of that. So that was something I really didn't have to. And then, like you said, you know, they would want us to go on because they're where, you know, they live to be, you know. And so now we just have to carry on and do those things that, like you say, that we've been taught. I have a great legacy here, you know, and I just have to carry that on and pass it on.
Amen. Amen. Certainly that is what we're trying to drive at here. Now, Brother Jackie, if you would unmute yourself, and I want to try to get this question in again. What I was trying to ask you before was that if you got somebody who may be listening to us or who may play this webinar later, and they are really stuck in the throes of drug abuse, substance abuse of some kind, walk us through turning that around, or what are the benchmarks or parameters they need to start doing to try to get help or seek help.
First, that person really have to know that they're ready. You have to admit to yourself that you're ready and seek out help. We have places like Stevens Center. We have Home of Grace. We could contact those same people that Zeta was speaking of, or you could contact somebody like me, and we will help you find and get some help. But you really have to be ready to get that help. A family member can't do it for you. As hard, as bad as they want to, they can encourage you, and but you really have to be willing and ready to do it for yourself.
Okay, well, thank you. I want you to bring that out because you are a living illustration in my personal life that you can turn it around. And maybe one of these days we're going to do a one-on-one where you can just tell your story, your journey. But I did want to say to those persons who may be what we call functional abusers, they go to work every day, but yet they abuse and they hold down jobs and they abuse, and we want them to know that that's not normal. Like you were talking earlier about getting high to cope with your problems. And, you know, we've been in a 9-month grieving period. COVID has put us in the throes of 9 months of grieving, and we don't see no light of getting out of that in the next couple of months. And we've missed Thanksgiving in a major way, and getting ready to miss Christmas in a major way. And so these are real precious, and we need to have coping skills to manage stress and anxiety, and know that it's all right if you can't do it and then you have a problem. We have people like Jackie and others who are willing to reach out to you and help you. We live in a no judgment zone. If you come for help, those of us who are professionals that help in whatever arena we help in, we live in a no judgment zone because we've been trained, and most of us have lived and experienced enough to know that all of us need help. And certainly I know substance abuse is, you know, being locked up and quarantined for all this time would definitely put you reaching for a bottle or reaching for a pill bottle, trying to solve problems. And that is definitely not the answer. I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Ms. Zadie. If you would send your information over, and Jackie and Pamela, if y'all would send that information, I will get that out to those who did sign up for the webinar this coming week. I want to thank all of those who joined us in the webinar and by Facebook. If you have questions at this time and you're in the webinar, if you would put those in the chat, and we'll try to get those answered for you. Farrah's going to sing for us one more time, and we'll get ready for the Q&A. I love you, Farrah. She's going to sing for us one more time, and we're going to try to see if there are any questions going to come up during that song. Welcome, Farrah, as she comes again.
When peace like a river attended my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
Amen. Thank you, Farah, so much for being our psalmist tonight. All right, Larry, if you can uncover and address the questions, and we'll see who will take them.
All right. The first question that we have is it normal to go a couple of years feeling okay and then get into a deep depression again?
Zaid, if you want to speak to that one for me, if you would.
You're muted, Miss Zadie. Please unmute first.
Hit your there
Okay,
you go.
I got you. Well, you know, we said there's no real time parameters on grief. However, if you've been doing well, and then all of a sudden after 2 years you start experiencing some problems, you might want to talk with someone about that, just to make sure, you know, there's something that you may, and maybe you dealt with a situation or something just recently came up that made you go back and reflect on something. So you might want to either speak to a good friend, or you can go to a support group, or you can talk to your pastor about it. And if it's something that needs more attention, then you can seek a professional.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zadie. The next question I have is, what is the most common reason for the denial of grief?
The most common reason for the denial of grief is just being human and wanting to feel like that we own things that we do not own. We find ourselves being possessive when really we are just stewards. A mother give birth to a child, that's my child. We wake up and realize who our parents are, that's my mama. And really, we don't own anything. And so the flesh of a person always want to be gratified, to be pleased. And so we find ourselves being selfish. And so, you know, we just don't want to deal with life not as we plan it. And so that brings about us being denying and angry and bitter and those kind of things, because when we sit down and by faith take a look at the process, that if we are believers, we belong to God, and all that we own belong to him. And in the sovereignty of God, he has a will and a right to do what he wants to, and he doesn't need our permission to do it. A lot of time we get caught up in the fact of how a person died and erase how they lived. How you die does not erase the memory of how you lived. And there's no indication whether you live good or bad, because you may have died a tragic death. Right now we're dealing with a lot of loved ones being lost to COVID, and we don't know how to feel about that. And so it brings about a lot of feelings that, you know, these kind of platforms kind of help us come into contact with and recognize God is sovereign. And if your loved one died in the Lord, that is the joy that you hold on to. That the actual transitioning process is something that we have problem with, because God did something to me he really didn't have a right to do. He took my baby. He took my mama. He took my daddy. He took my wife, my husband, my grandmama. And we use those personal possessive pronouns because we take ownership of things that we really don't own.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, I've got two more questions.
Okay.
Could you give examples of signs of substance abuse that the average person may not notice or observe?
Brother Jackie.
Being distant, not want to be around everybody else like normal, hanging out with people they wouldn't normally hang out with, being in places they wouldn't normally be in. If this is something that just out of the blue, they start doing weird, yeah. Now this don't only have to be marijuana or crack or meth. This could be prescription drugs too. You got people hiding in the bathrooms taking them prescription drugs, going to several different doctors in town to get prescription drugs. You start noticing stuff like that, they probably got a problem.
Okay. And this is actually related to that. What are some practical solutions for the individual who does not want to go to a professional counselor or get substance abuse help? What are some practical solutions for those type of people?
Well, they've got 12-step meetings, several different places here in town. And all those guys at those 12-step meetings have gone through it. A lot of them have 20, 30 years clean or longer, just depending on which meeting you go to. And some of them are professional counselors at the meetings. So, but even going there, you have to be prepared to share and absorb the knowledge that these people have about staying clean. I mean, you just have to face the fact. I did it. I messed up. And get yourself out the way if you want to be better. Like Pastor Hawkins say, most drug users are selfish. And
Whoops. You were accidentally muted by Mr. Jackie.
Unmute yourself, Jackie. I muted you. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, you have to. Most drug users are selfish because they're only thinking about themselves and when they're gonna get the next high. So they have to come to the realization that they really want help. Even going to a 12-step meeting, you would have to be open and have an open mind that you want to be better. That's another option besides going to a professional place like Stephen Center or Home of Grace. Now I'm going to tell you, Home of Grace is one of the best places around here. You get to stay 90 days and you get to form a relationship with God. All places don't offer that. They offer you a higher power. But the Home of Grace is going to offer you God, Jesus Christ, as your Lord and Savior.
Thank you, sir. That's the end of the questions.
Okay. I do want to thank my son, Larry Hawkins II, the CEO and co-founder of Hawkins Development Group, for managing our webinar tonight. There he is. Appreciate him always helping his dad out. Again, Miss Zadie, Brother Jackie, and Pamela, I'm in your debt tonight for you being our panelists. And certainly thank God for my psalmist tonight, Farah, for blessing us through song. Listen, I want to thank everybody in the webinar and those of you who have been so engaged on Facebook. I want to thank you. We will be doing forums and symposiums from time to time, trying to put in your toolbox tools that you will need as we get ready to go in a couple of days into this Christmas season. And we're definitely in a unique situation, and we got to make sure that we do our level best to stay safe. And by doing that, it means that we're gonna miss Christmas as usual. So make sure that you do that. Antoine, you have that question you want to give us right quick?
Yes, sir. Let me, if you don't mind me unmuting, it's easier for me to just read it
That'll work.
instead of typing. Dr. Kenneth Maurice Davis wanted you, Dr. Hawkins, to speak to how do we process the suffering of humanity in the midst of divinity's sovereignty? He wanted you to speak to that. How do we process the suffering of humanity in the midst of divinity's sovereignty?
Well, it goes back to what I said initially, Anton, that we have to get outside of self. Jackie mentioned it, Zadie mentioned it. As human beings, we are some of the most selfish creatures on the planet. Now, here it is. When it comes down to suffering, comes down to us as human beings suffering loss, and especially loved ones. That is the greatest loss I think we can suffer. And us dealing with that over against our faith that we have in God, believing that nothing happens unless God allows it, then how can God allow these kind of things to happen to me if he's a loving, caring, and kind God that I've always known him to be? And here it is, never forget this. God is not asking us to do something that he has not done. When we lose loved ones, he gave up Jesus. The Bible said, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. If God could sit on the throne in heaven and watch what humanity did to Jesus, how they crucified him in the most ignominious death there was at the time, being crucified at the hands of Roman soldiers, to hang on the cross 3 hours, deprived of drink and being able to breathe. He had to push himself up on his feet that was spiked to the cross just to catch a breath, and his arms were pulling and the weight was pressing upon his diaphragm and he couldn't breathe. God didn't rescue him. He allowed him to die. And if God spared not Jesus from Calvary, then who are we to think that he would spare our loved ones from leaving us and from dying and transitioning? So we have to look at it from God's perspective. God is using now, he's using the life we live now, getting us ready to go and to be with him. And flesh and blood is not going to be able to inherit the kingdom of God. And this opened up a whole nother can of worms, because you got to get this in your mind that there's not going to be a family reunion when you get to heaven. You're not going to walk up and see mama and see daddy and all the Hawkins get together. Flesh and blood can't go. So that means that when we die, the Hawkins are done, and the Rogers and are done. The Dickies are done. We're going to be changed, and I don't think that the believers are thinking about the process. There's going to be a kindred spirit. What remembering we'll have of this world, I don't know, but one thing I'm sure of, we won't remember our family members as they were here. My mama is 75, 76. Pray God she live a long time, but I don't want her trapped into a 70, 80, 90-year-old body in heaven when she get there. The Bible says we're going to be changed. We're going to get new bodies. And so the memory of this world shall not transfer across to the Jordan to the point that I'm going to look my mama up or look my daddy up. Because if that be the case, God forbid that be the case, that when I get to heaven and call the family roll and I got a brother or sister that can't be found, man, you tell me I'm going to enjoy heaven knowing my brother went to hell? No, I'm not going to do that. And so God is not going to do that to you. That's why when you die, this world, you're going to leave it here, but you're going to awaken then to a new world and be in the presence of Christ. So I think that if you can just remember, God ain't asking you to do something he hadn't already done. He sent Jesus to the cross, so we have no right to argue with him about what's going on when he decides to make a decision and say it's time for someone to come home. Are there any other questions? I hope that that helps Pastor, with the question that he had. I want to bring this full circle. And again, thank my panelists and my psalmists, and then the community, all of you who've dialed in tonight. Appreciate you. Look, I want you to share this link, put it out there, because somebody will need to watch this later. Somebody will need this before Christmas. But some takeaways tonight. Number one, you got to keep on living. I say, if you wake up in the morning, you got some more living to do. Then you need to determine what that living looks like. And you can't be moping around mad, sad because somebody is not here. If that person loved you like you say they did, and you love them like you do, you gotta get on with life. You gotta do the things, take control of your life. Like Pamela said, she said, I gotta take care of Pam. Somebody else may need to take care of yourself. You've been living with somebody long-term illness. You put your life on hold. They got well, and God ultimately healed them. They transitioned. You lost some friends you used to hang out with, and you left here. Well, you got some more living to do, and you got to grab hold to life and keep it moving. And so you got to do that. You got to grab a hold to life and keep living. That's why we entitled this tonight, Living with the Empty Chair. That chair's gonna forever be empty. I could call a roll of family members that I have left in the cemetery. The remains are gonna be there, but my faith teaches me they're with the Lord. And I seek to be with him one day so that we can be changed and then ultimately worship him for the God he is, and be in his presence. And so remember, if you plan on going to heaven and the rapture does not occur, you got to die to get there. So don't see death as some horror, some terror that we cannot deal with. God has given us the tools. Job said, I had heard about you with my own ears, but now I see. And so these traumatic moments in our lives ultimately bring us to a closer walk with God when it's all said and done. As I was saying, we're going to plan another webinar into the first month of the new year, probably about mid-January. And we're going to talk about COVID in the hood. COVID in the hood. We're going to talk about this COVID-19, and the vaccine is out, and we need to be informed as a people about the vaccine. So we'll have some panelists who can talk to us about that, help us to make an informed decision when it comes our opportunity to participate in the vaccinating process. I want to thank all of our first responders who have already been vaccinated, who are out on the front line making a difference. But we're going to have a talk about COVID and talk about where we stand as a community and where we stand as individuals when it comes down to the vaccine. So we look to see you next time. We
got one last question before you wrap up.
One last question. Go ahead, son.
Question is, with the Home of Grace, do you have to want to be there?
Brother Jackie, if you would unmute yourself.
Now, it does help if the person wants to be there. Now, I can call and talk to the admin and find out what their protocol is now. I haven't actually dealt with them in a couple of years now, but I can call and find out for sure. But that does help if the person wants to be there. But I'm telling you, once a person gets there, they're not gonna walk out of no woods. Once they get there, and if they tired, they'll stay. They'll stay. If you want to, you can contact me, whoever asked that question, and we'll talk some more about it.
All right. That's the last question. I've been most appreciative of your time tonight. And I would trust that when we send out our next invite that you want to be a part of the L.G. Hawkins Ministry presentation, COVID in the Hood. We're going to talk about COVID-19. We're going to talk about the vaccine. We're going to talk about what it's going to look like when we get all back together safely and what we can do to make that happen. Love you. Thank you. Appreciate you. And look forward to sharing with you. When those panelists send in their information, I will send it to those who have registered via email. But don't forget, share the link. Share the link. Somebody need this information. It's going to be hard for Christmas. Sitting and watching this webinar may just help somebody make it and take control of their lives. I love you, and there isn't anything you can do about it. Y'all be blessed.
Good night, y'all. Merry Christmas.
Have a good night, everyone.
Everybody in the
The
webinar,
same
you can
to
unmute
you.
yourself and say goodbye. Everybody in the
Bye.
webinar, you can unmute
Bye.
yourself and say goodbye.
Thank you, Pastor Hawkins, for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you,
you for coming.
everybody.
Good night,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Good
night.
Everybody.
Bye.
Job well done.
Bye, y'all.
Hey,